What is it that you want? What is it that you want? If you don't like capitalism, and you don't like state socialism, what the hell do you want? And if you don't have an answer to that, you're just playing around. I'm suggesting to you that the makings, the ingredients, the pieces of a very American localist vision linked to, in a sophisticated way, larger scale models is available and can be developed if people care about it and generate a vision of radically decentralized yet coherently managed systemic change. Now, that's a big mouthful. And if you even grasp the edges of that tiger and want to play with it, it opens a whole series of really serious, sophisticated theoretical problems. We can get into that. Political dynamics problems, power questions. But I'm saying that the starting point is there a real model that could be done locally now, in state by state? And I say part of it's true, and it is available and building. And there is also the second leg of the walk on two legs strategy of potentially diverting the anger in a way that goes after the big banks and goes after the 1% that owns 50% of the capital. Those two things, I think, are emergent and available for people to act upon. Let me take another step. I am not talking about the next election only. You want to play this game? The chips are decades of your life, and don't bother if you're not interested in playing that level. You're talking about the most powerful system in the history of the world, and if you want to begin to offer an alternative to it, the name of the game is, are you prepared to think about how you build over time, at least on these two levels? My own view is, it is possible that the United States will decay forever with no successful resolution. Rome declined. It is possible that there will be right-wing fascism taking over the system and building on the anger. And it is also possible that, like Chile, we may have to go through that, possibly, and the same questions, what do you want and how do we get there, will be at the other end of that door anyway. It is possible that there will be nuclear war. If you look at those questions coldly, the answer always comes out, is there a constructive and serious political way forward no matter what? The bottom line, the least you can do is achieve positive gains for ordinary people. The least you can do by following and developing a different organization of the power of capital. So let me remind you, the name of that very famous book was Capital. So what we're saying here is the corporate system controls and manages power because it controls and manages capital. The progressive liberal approach, which I will take as much as we can get, is to use regulation and taxation of that power system. The socialist approach, the social democratic partial approach, is that you need to change the organization of capital. And what I've said to you in a different way is a radically decentralized change in capital is American's apple pie, and we can build on it. And there are sectors elsewhere that ought to be built on, and there are positive examples. So, let me take you one more step down this funny trail. There's a lot to be done. And I want to come to something that is very, very complicated and very, very simple, but very hard for most people to grasp. So this is the most controversial thing I'm going to talk about. I think it's obvious, but most people find it very difficult. So I'm talking to the person in your chair. Let it sit there like a brick on your lap, and don't look at it, and don't react to it. See if you can kind of rub it around the edges and see if you can make sense of what I'm going to say now. There is a third possibility and a third element in this particular picture. What is different about the United States from all the European countries is it is a continent, and that has consequences. This is a 3,000-mile-long system. You can drop West Germany into Texas. You can even drop it into Oregon and Washington State. You can drop France into the same place. I sometimes say to my students, those dinky little countries can be dropped into most states, most of the countries. That has consequences. A small polity, technical, a small polity can be more easily organized by mass organizing. A large continental internal empire, I use that term with care, a large continental internal empire like the United States of America makes it very easy for corporate groups to play off workers, races, ethnic groups, etc., one against the other. That was exactly what Madison meant. It was designed to do that. Michael mentioned this last night. Madison and all of the founders understood the major division, it's quite explicit, is between those who own property and those who don't. It reads just like Karl Marx. His argument was, his argument, excuse me, wait for the argument.
It's a cliffhanger.
Madison's argument was very straightforward, and it was brilliant. He said, spread them out. He called it extend the market. Spread them out, and the people out there in California, it wasn't California then, the people in New England, the people here in Virginia will divide and conquer, and they will never be able to take over property. That's the model, and you're living it right now. Moreover, large numbers are coming. There are another 150 million Americans will be here by mid-century. Ecological disaster built into the numbers. If you accept the high number from the Census Bureau, it will be 1.1 billion by the end of the century. It's already 330 or 340 million. You cannot, I ask you to think about it, the person in your chair, tell me how you're going to run participatory democracy in a continental system of 350 million people, which will be 500 million by mid-century. That cannot be done. If you're trying to run the system, there's going to have to be radical decentralization. Now, it has to be smaller than a continent and bigger than most states. Let this brick sit on your lap. If radical decentralization is the only way you can get any form of real democracy and break the Madisonian model, the system is going to have to be decentralized into something that is less than a continent and larger than most states. That's called a region. So regional decentralization is the third plank in this discussion, and I'll put it in very simple terms. TVA was a regional idea. Roosevelt wanted to do 7 of them. It got corrupted. Those are regional models which had ecological and economic impact. But if that is the logic of where we have to go, I really came to California because I love the issue, then how do we begin to dramatize a different way of thinking about an anti-imperialist internal strategy in the internal empire that actually deals with scale? And the answer is, if regions are important, then are there any particular ones that might begin to generate a different model and a different possibility? The state of California as a state is the only region that is also a polity, organized as a polity. So I drop a suggestion to you. For those of you who want to throw a couple decades on the table, and those of you who believe that small groups can be important, they're the only ones, and those of you who happen to have a fantastic radio station that's interested in these things available, I would suggest to you that beginning to put forward an exciting and positive vision of what this state region could look like, now's the time. Offer a really developed alternative of what this, it's ridiculous that this 6th or 7th or 8th, large, depending whose numbers you use, economy in the world is being run in ridiculous form and subject to Washington's will. Washington's being controlled by the other side. There ought to be a positive vision. And there's plenty to work with in terms of what I've said here and models around the country. I sometimes think of it this way. If you went around the country, I think you ought to do this. You can find really exciting schools, and you can find really exciting health systems, and really exciting worker-owned companies, and really great public systems in energy and others. You can build together a mosaic of what a positive society really looks like, based not on theory, but on what you would like to have yourself that is real.